righty, folks. Welcome back to the Mushing Alaska podcast. We're your hosts, Brennan and Sean. Always a pleasure to be back. Sean, how's it going, my dude?
Oh, pretty good. Feel a little weird pulling all-nighters for work and stuff. But yep, I'm okay. I'm a human being that has made it to today and will probably make it to tomorrow, maybe the day after that.
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah, the old overnighters. What are you on? Back-to-back overnighters?
Yeah, I'm not good at it. I don't know how people do it, dude. People are
Dude,
like
how did
work the
you
like
run?
graveyard shift for like 4 nights in a row. I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
How did you run the
I'm a little bitch,
Iditarod?
dude.
You can't
I'm
even
telling you, dude,
do
I'm
like
soft,
two
dude.
overnighters? Who is this guy?
I mean, I
You
can
ran the
and I
Iditarod? Did you
will,
run the
but I'm gonna
Iditarod?
bitch and moan,
Jeez.
you know?
I
I was a
love
different
it.
guy,
Dude,
different guy.
we're 3.5 weeks away from the Iditarod.
Jesus.
Where you at on the Stoke level? Are you kind of
Stoke
creeping
level,
along? Or
I'm excited to get
are you still kind of like
out
down
there.
here? You need to get a little bit up here, or what are we thinking?
Right now, today, I'm down. I'm down a little bit and but I know it's on the horizon and I'm excited for selfish reasons to get out on the trail and see my friends and see the trail and be part of the whole scene again because I ever I've got withdrawals from going to Copper Basin and going to Kinnick, and I haven't been around all these events that have been going on. The quest just happened, and maybe I'm probably gonna miss the Goose Bay, which is this next weekend. So I'm excited to check back in with everybody.
Right on. Yeah, man. I mean, it'll be here before you know it. So I would say enjoy the calm before the storm because you're about to be pulling some more overnighters, my guy.
Yeah, but it's not. It's way sicker pulling overnighters out on the Iditarod Trail with a bunch of other people who are also pulling the same overnight as you and doing it way more difficultly. And it's the
And
driving for me. It's my shift involves 6 hours of driving through the night. So
oof.
but I mean, like, it can be done. I'm sorry to complain a little. It's just sometimes
No, I mean,
life
like
feels hard,
that's what we're here for.
that's all. Just
Let it
sometimes it feels
out.
a little hard,
It's
you
all
know?
right, man. Get it off. Get it
And
off,
I
man. It's cool.
just not, sometimes I'm not always just, oh, hey, everybody. Wow. Oh, it's me, Sean. How are you doing? No, sometimes it's like, hey, you know, you guys carry the conversation. Brennan, go ahead and you start
And,
talking.
and
I'm tired of
hey,
talking.
listen. I mean, I feel you. We talked before we started recording. Sean was coming off of doing a Northern Lights tour, and it
Cloudy
was
the whole
like
night, by the way.
literally,
Just
that's what
fully
I was
cloudy.
about to say. Like Sean's like one of those like we're like not even 20 minutes into the ride, and I'm like looking at the forecast, like what the fuck are we doing here? Like we're not seeing him tonight, and Sean still had to suffer his way through that shift. And no, you guys didn't see anything, did you?
No, no, but I'm a big boy. We handled it,
It's part of the
and
show,
well,
man. Comes with the
and
territory.
it is. It's all good. It's all good.
But anyways, let's move on. So one thing that I wanted to just briefly mention was Sean and I were talking, and like this intro to our podcast has kind of like started to grow and longer and longer. And it's funny because Sean and I were talking about it, and it's like if we were listening to another podcast, we might just skip that and get to the guest kind of thing. But we've gotten some great feedback that some of y'all enjoy some of the banter and like, oh, don't worry about how long you guys talk and whatnot. So in an effort to please everyone, I mean, that's all we're doing here, man. We're trying to people please over here, all right? We are gonna start time stamping the episode so that way you can kind of like see what we're talking about and go where you please. Um, and we still want to make sure you hear us talk about our guest before we get into the actual interview as well. So just be on the lookout for that quick little change. And we appreciate y'all's feedback, man. Y'all keep it coming. We're here. We aim to please, baby. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then the other day, I was kind of like coming to the realization that everyone's been focused on bad drops. And I was looking up the date, and I believe Monday, as we record this on the 7th, Monday is, I believe, the deadline for bag drops. And so um, that is going to be a huge weight off of people's shoulders. There was a funny post that I saw today. Gabe Dunham was saying something about, we'll be packing, weighing, and whatever, bagging or something. It was a list of a couple things, like any and all are welcome to come help this weekend. Like this is that time of the year where all the mushers and their support people are being called out. I wanted to actually ask you about that, Sean. I'm thinking back to calls before we started this podcast where you're literally talking to me while you're using what's the meat cutter, what kind of saw, a meat saw, what is that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a bandsaw is what we were using. Jeff had
Okay.
that's the fancy thing. I set that up. I would say, if you those are expensive and tough to get, and then they're that's like they're also you got to be they're pretty dangerous. And then you got the chop saw. That's what we use at Dallas. Is a little bit more bond on a budget scenario, and the chop saw. People know what that looks like. I'm not going to try to describe it because then it's a saw that you chop stuff with. Okay. So then you
Can you
put meat
simplify
in
that
it.
a little bit more, please?
You chop wood with it, but we chop meat with it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you're doing that for, you know, several hours. I mean, you're doing it all winter just to feed the dogs leading up to for training and stuff. And then I mean, you maybe don't have to as much, but if you're going to go on training trips or other races and stuff, you're doing it. And then for Iditarod, you got a bunch of drop bags, and you're going to be cutting up like hundreds of pounds of meat into like, you want to make it small enough that you could feed the dog this meal frozen as it is. And it's not like they have to sit there and like chew on it like a bone. They can just like kind of take a bite of
Get
it,
to it.
like they're taking out of an apple. So it's basically like you want to go something like the size of like a quarter pounder burger, a patty or a maybe a third of a pound or something. But if it gets more than like an inch thick and it's 20 below zero, then it gets really really hard. And it's just like if your dog's a little tired or they're like maybe not super hungry but a little hungry, like the easier you can make it for them to eat it, the better. And so those little things matter. I don't know. There's a lot that goes in the drop bags, not just cutting the meat, but yeah, cutting meat is messy and in some ways it's therapeutic. And then you get over some amount of hours of doing it, like 3 or 4 hours, and you're like, okay, my back kind of hurts. And how much more do we have left of this? And you're not really even close. So, um, yeah,
So let me ask this: how heavy can a drop bag be for that Iditarod? Or is there
I think
it
it's a 50-pound limit.
50? Is that the rule of thumb for most races where drop bags are allowed? 50 pounds?
I don't think I mean, a lot of the other races, these guys are flying out the bag. So there's other races
Right.
really don't even have limits. You're just driving the bag somewhere. So it's like you put it in one bag or three bags, whatever.
Okay.
This is like
So
you
50
have
pound
weight limits
limit.
on these little planes. And I think it
Got
might be
you.
50 pounds from what I remember. This is off the dome. I don't remember it, but it's hard to fill up. I remember it being like if you fill up a bag overweight, like that's
You might
kind of
not
it's like
close.
it's fucking heaping. So
Right. Yep.
those, yeah.
So there are like 20 checkpoints ish. So you're talking
Yeah.
about 50 pounds times 20. So
Well, I mean,
we're
yeah,
looking at,
that this people typically are somewhere between 1,200 and 2,000 pounds.
yep,
I would
that's what I
say
was about to
maybe
say.
in some extremer cases above 2,000 pounds, maybe. Uh, and those are for people that might have better funding, and they can, if you're going to send out 2,000 pounds, you're sending out good shit and checkpoints to be able to take your 24-hour break and have three different options. And you're like, look, I can afford to send some extra food out there because you're not getting the food back. You can get like your gloves back and stuff if you want, but you're not going to ship frozen meat back to Anchorage. You just keep it. It stays at the checkpoint at the village to give to sled dogs that live at these villages or pet dogs.
I never knew that
And
actually.
yeah, and if it's at, I'm not, yeah, they're not gonna fly back any food or water or
Dang,
anything.
that sucks. So like,
You eat that cost.
so the people that are just doing this kind of more on a budget, they might not be packing 50-pound bags.
Well, you're not packing 50-pound bags is just the limit per bag. You're gonna have like 8 bags though. There's no limit on like how many. I guess there is. Like they don't want you. I guess there is a limit. I don't know what the limit on amount of bags is, but when you go to your 24-hour rest, like you might send out 6 bags. None of them are going to be 50 pounds. They're all going to be like a bit smaller, probably, because it's just. I mean, it's whatever you want to do, but the reality is, 50-pound bags hard to deal with. Maybe
Is
it'd
it
be better to have two 30-pound bags or whatever. But
is
yeah,
it
the
also
24-hour one, you're having a bunch of bags, and you got to label them all, and you got to keep track of what meat's in what bag, and make it as easy as you can on yourself when you're sleep deprived and it's 3 a.m. and you're trying to get past this checkpoint. You're like, where the hell is my chicken skins at? I don't.
right? So you mentioned that sometimes people will have three different checkpoints that could be their 24-hour. And my question to you though is like for those that are doing this more on a budget, they might just be like it's McGrath or it's whatever, and
Yeah.
just like they know that's their 24 period, and they can kind of maybe adjust their schedule outside of that, but like they know that that's where we're stopping.
Yeah, you can like kind of, there's a middle grounds too. You could like send out your plan A to 24, and then maybe like at another checkpoint, you could be like, all right, I'm going to send like a little extra. And like I probably could pull off a 24 if I totally feel like I want to call that audible, but not just like send the exact same amount of stuff. But I mean, I work for Dallas and Jeff, they have the resources and will and whatever, uh, to send 2 or 3 different checkpoints to be a 24-hour. But yeah, so we're talking, a lot of bags, like almost no checkpoints have 1 bag, so
Yeah.
you have, and so you're sending out kibble, fat, you got like you want to like have as many things on your dog's menu as possible if you have the luxury, like sending out, some people, if you're on a budget, dude, you might not have have beef and chicken skins and liver and tripe and beaver and all
Salmon?
these
Is
options
salmon getting
and
eaten out on the
pork
trail?
belly. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Salmon's, yeah. So you just,
Salmon, and what's the
there's,
other
you're,
what's the other fish that's even like some people feel like it's better than salmon?
there are other fish. I've never really fed dogs any other fish personally,
I
but there
forget what
certainly are.
mushroom I was.
Anything, dude. The reality is anything that is protein, like meat, and has some fat in it, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be good for the dogs.
Got you. Word. Well, do you have any other thoughts about just the drop bag process
Dude,
or your
absolutely.
experience or anything else you want to talk before I want to also move on to some other stuff as well, but just anything else you want to kind of like wrap up with that?
Yeah, I mean, you're wrapping over 1,200 booties, and you want to have them like wrapped up in pairs in fours, um, and it's one of the most expensive things you're sending out there besides the food is $1.25 a booty, and then you're going to send out extra gloves, extra socks for yourself, some extra, maybe some dog. At your 24, you might send out things like dog blankets, and extra ointments and extra, remedies for giving your dog 24-hour spa treatment at that stop. And then like you're thinking about these drop bags like much. I mean, you've been thinking about them all winter long, and usually everybody inevitably is waiting until the last minute to get it done. If there's probably a couple mushers maybe that have it all, organized and ready to rock. But yeah, you're filling up all kind. You got to label everything, or you got to have different colored bags. You have to like you have to label, like if you have 8 bags, you got to write on the bag like 1 of 8 bags. This is bag 1 of 8. This is bag 2 of 8. This is bag 3 of 8. This is bag 4, and so on, so that the people flying the bags know that there's of 8 bags. So how many bags do we have here? So make it as easy on them as you can. And then they have, you have to have your last name. People like will spray paint their like bags like something super bright and colorful, so that when you have this huge supply of 43 mushers drop bags in a pile at each checkpoint, and you're trying to, it's alphabetical, but you're not really sure, and then you see that, oh, that's the one with like the hot pink spray paint on it, or this is the one that's in different color, anything to make it stand out. And
Or
so there's
like
all
if
these
it's
little
at night,
things.
easier to see at night kind of thing too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe some reflectors on it if you have that luxury. But yeah, I mean, just anything to make you stand out, or, just write your name in big, bold letters, and having a short last name's kind of nice. Like having an Underwood kind of sucks. And if your last name is like 2 letters, you can just write huge freaking letters
Right.
with the biggest Sharpie ever. And it's,
Uh,
yeah.
I was gonna say, well, first of all, excellent job there. I appreciate the elaboration. Um, and then I looked up the fish I was talking about is sheefish. You never heard of sheefish
Yeah.
before?
I've heard of sheefish. I've never had it, and I've never given it to dogs. Not for any other reason than people didn't buy that meat for or have access to it. And sometimes just like, do you have access to it? Sheefish is something available in Alaska, I believe it. Uh, like Eddie got his hands on some. I remember him saying this winter, some sheefish, and it's probably high in fat. It's like an Arctic fish, I think, that like people got from Kotzebue or something, and you know, going to be a great source of oils and fats.
Right. Right on. The other thing I wanted to transition to, just kind of like a little bit in the news, was Josh McNeal had announced that he's withdrawing from the Iditarod this year, which definitely sad to hear that. Obviously, we kind of talked about it in the last episode. Just tough to see that he fell and re-injure an old injury in his shoulder, but I love what they're kind of doing with that, which is Walter Robinson is going to be running his team in the Iditarod, and I think that's awesome. We just had Emily on a few episodes ago, and she was just a wonderful breath of fresh air, and especially for as young as she is, and then to hear how Walter ran his first Iditarod in the early 2000s in '01, I think, and then he hasn't run it since. And now we've got this success coming with his daughter, and their son as well. He's a couple years behind, kind of thing. It's awesome that he's going to get a chance to do that. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts or anything on that, but I just thought that was kind of worth mentioning in this intro section.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that he's like the guy behind the scenes of Emily's success. Funding the dogs and helping with the training, and he's super experienced with sled dogs and clearly knows what he's doing. I don't like know his like resume like super intimately, like of what he's done in the mushing world, and I just know though, like just by meeting him and having talked to him and seeing his social media posts and stuff, I just know this guy's like the real deal Alaskan, like a real Alaskan man, and he's like you know he's gonna be able to get, he's doing drop bags right now, probably gonna get to take these dogs on a lot of training runs over the course of the next month, and or 3.5 weeks. And I think it's kind of cool for someone who's kind of been behind the scenes, and I don't think he's necessarily maybe the first guy to say, hey, I want to be doing the interview, and I want to be like on the front page of this or that, which is what happens when you're in the Iditarod. But it's kind of cool. Like the guy that's been behind the scenes of Emily's success now gets to be the star. And maybe he doesn't. That's definitely not why he's doing it though. He's doing it because it's one of the most amazing ways you're going to ever experience Alaska, and he's going to have an incredible group of dogs in front of him. I think bummer for Josh, like a tough season for him. But the dogs, if you look at it from the dogs' perspectives, it's been a wonderful season. They've gone and done 100-mile run in Kinnick, and they flew down to Bethel and ran another 100-something miles, and they have done a bunch of training runs leading up to those trips, and now they're I'm not sure if they are running any races between now and the Iditarod, but those are some really clearly talented dogs and a really talented dog man behind them. And so he's going to do everything he can to kind of get to know the ins and outs from both running the dogs and also just talking with Josh and seeing, Josh is going to be filling him and this dog's pretty good doing this. And so took me from Calskag to Antioch and back at 10 miles an hour. And so took me through the blowhole and blah, 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 blah. Like they're going to be talking about all that stuff for weeks. And it's, the circus that it must be in the Robinson family with the McNeals. It's got to be fun and exciting and a totally doable challenge.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we had Josh on, it was clear that his intention was to build a team that was competitive for the Iditarod. And so I'm sure that this injury is a tough pill to swallow, but I think that he has a good, from what I can tell. I was just earlier today reading his announcement on his Facebook page of Crooked Creek Kennel. And I think that this decision is just a better decision for him in the long term. It's an injury that he's already had before, so he's re-aggravated it. And, it's like you can go out there and probably tough it out, but in the long run, that may not be the wise decision down the road. So it's like everyone wins in this. And I think that it's a great story. I know you don't know much about Walter's resume mushing wise, but I thought that these words from Josh said a lot. He said, and I'm only reading what he put. So to me, it's still, he's Walter to me. But it says, Wally is one of the best dog men I know, an incredible outdoorsman and a true Alaskan. I feel incredibly honored and blessed that he's going to be driving our team to Nome. With this change, there's a lot to do before drop bags are due Monday, but let's get ready to cheer on Wally and the Crooked Creek dogs as they take on the Iditarod. So
This is going to be, if for Josh's goals of having a competitive, team for these races, he's not, even though he's missing out, his dogs aren't, and they're going to be better for it moving forward. Any musher that has a dog team that's been trained up and ready to go and is in good shape wants to see their dogs do what they're trained to do, what they're bred to do. And you see this happen regularly where this happens maybe almost every year, if certainly 4 out of 5 years where you have someone, Nick Petit, test positive for COVID or something. I took Jeff's place. Like Zoe Denner she went to the hospital the morning of the thing, and her husband took her place the same year I did my Jeff thing. This happens all the time. Life happens, shit goes down, and it might not, it doesn't ever happens when you want it to happen. But your dogs are ready to rock and you want to see them go out there and crush it. So if it's not going to be you, it's, you'd prefer it to be, but you find the best person you can find that it's going to give your dogs the best chance of success. And Josh, it looks like he's done that.
Yeah. So we'll be rooting on Josh through Walter's, in the driver's seat of that. And that also, I wonder what that does to the Robinson household, that like right now, Emily was probably, or is still training to defend her. I think it's just Junior Iditarod. Is she also doing Junior Willow coming up? I forget.
I think so. Yeah.
But either way, she's has intentions of, holding that title again. And so, now that Walter's going to be kind of focused more on that, it'll just be interesting to see if that, has any effect on things there. And either way, though, best of luck to Walter, and we'll be rooting him on. So
Those
with
guys are going to
that,
find a way to do it
dude,
just
yeah,
fine.
absolutely. I
And if they
fully
have to,
agree.
if Emily has to not run the Willow 100 or whatever, I bet you she's still. I guarantee you she'll still be in the junior Iditarod,
Right.
and he'll get his drop bags in on time. And the drop bags don't have to be perfect. You can sit there and try to, forgot this, forgot that, whatever. You know, just get the important things in there, turn him in, and he's gonna be fine. You can figure out the rest out there. You're allowed to, like, if someone left their stuff, and they didn't use their dog food from their dog bag, you're allowed to grab their bag if they already left the checkpoint. You can't plan on that. You're not allowed to, like, oh, I'm going to plan on just using other people's stuff. No, you can't do that. But if you, like, are in a pinch, you're allowed to, anyone that already grabbed their bags and left, their stuff is just sitting there in a pile. It's not going to be used, especially at those checkpoints that aren't villages. And so, if I was Walter, I'd be thinking, like, what do we really need in these bags? Do I need to put, my cashmere sweater in there? Probably not,
Nice.
But I don't think Wally's doing that.
Right on. Well, that is kind of just some of the few things that we wanted to bring up before we kind of talked a little bit about the Yukon Quests from over this last weekend. And I figured that we would start with the Yukon Quest over on the Canada side. I'm going to go ahead, for those of you watching, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up on the screen. We can kind of talk a little bit about the results. And well, Sean, you and I were talking beforehand. You were like, dude, all the finishers, 4 ladies. That is one of
Yeah.
the I love that, man.
Dude, where
It
are the
was funny,
feminists
like,
at? Where are the feminists at? Let's go, dude. This should be sharing this to New York Times. Where's this?
right?
Where's hello, holler?
Dude, what's crazy is like I was reading these names, I was following over the weekend, and like I didn't quite connect those dots. Like I know they're all females, but hearing you just say it when we were talking before this, I was like, wait, I didn't actually connect those dots. So that I love that. It was just, it's kind of a smaller race this year, and I know that they had to shorten the race from a 450 to a 300. Do you have any thoughts or anything on that?
Yeah, I mean the trail broke down so much so that it's a that maybe the teams could have made it through, but it's just like, what are we doing here? There's probably some open water on the trail, and I think keep the dog safe, keep the musher safe. 300 miles is a pretty long way. Um, maybe they probably learned some things as a racing organization, but it seems like they did the best that they could do given the situation that they had. Michelle Phillips back-to-back wins. Mela Hill, she was in first a lot of this race and came in a close second with 18 minutes behind Michelle, and that's I don't know who Mela Hill is. So now I do. I mean, I don't, but I would like to. That's pretty insane job she did. And Kaylin Owens from Rerun Kennel, her husband ran the Copper Basin with this team. So really good trained up team. She's if you guys always encourage you to check out their kennel, Rerun Kennel. They are getting like all their dogs are like rehomed dogs that didn't have a home, and they put together this hodgepodge team, but they don't really intend to try and go and win these races. But they just podiumed third place, and then Misha almost podiumed, but yeah, she did. She got to another finish line. She's had a really successful mushing season, and Normand Casavan and Connor McMahon, they weren't able to get to the finish line for one reason or another. But I know Connor's going to be rebounding and getting ready for Iditarod in every way he can, and yeah.
Yeah, man, I felt bad for Connor. I reached out to him the other day and just was kind of checking in, seeing how he's doing, and it stinks. It sounds like shortly after his decision to scratch, they shortened the race, and I think he was kind of, having some, like second guessing like his decision a little bit. It's like maybe I might not
Hindsight's
have.
2020, man.
Yeah,
But
it,
yeah, it would
it
have been
is
nice
what
to
it
know
is.
if the race was going to be 150 miles shorter. But whatever, man. It's
Yep.
he's
I
gonna
was gonna ask
he's
you
just gonna
too.
find a way.
I was gonna ask you about. I think I saw something about the trail had broken down so much that from one where it was broken down, they were actually transporting teams to another area and just like,
Hmm.
did you see that?
Yeah, I didn't see that. But yeah, the trails on the road system and close to the road for some, like certainly, I mean, every checkpoint on this trail is it's drivable. You can drive to it. So I'm sure, um, you can take a team and drive them around. If the river that they're on is open, and there's rushing open water. Um, you know, if you have the luxury of driving your team around that, and the races wants to keep the number one goal of the race is keeping the dogs safe, keeping the people safe, then you do it. And they had really warm temperatures in Whitehorse for weeks leading up to this race. Ironically, it was super cold in Fairbanks, and we'll get there, but um, they just have these days and days in a row of these warm temps, and it gets messy out there. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I was, going into the weekend, I was thinking we got three different races or two different locations, Alaska and Canada, three different races for each. We're gonna have our hands full, and I think the weather played a part in downplaying some of the races. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you saw a lot of the mushers were pulling out, and it's a shame that the weather played a factor like that, but nonetheless, we're still going to talk about it. So, I don't know if you had anything else you want to mention on the Canada side before we go over to Alaska.
yeah, there was a couple other races. The 250. I think they only ended up having two folks participating in that for whatever reason. But congrats to those guys. They both finished. Lou Twadell, I think he's a pretty French dude from what I remember, and Crystal Toe winning the race. Congrats to her.
Yeah, and that was also a shortened race. looks like about 45 miles shorter. And then the
And then
100
they had the 100.
also
Yeah.
shortened.
So yeah, Sean Dewalski, I met him at Copper Basin. He was a really nice guy. He has fast, sprinty dogs, and did this is kind of his specialization, I think. Um, and he clearly showed that that was the case. Won by 42 minutes, which is pretty good lead for 100 miles.
What's his
And then
what's his
saw some
MPH moving average speed 11 and a half.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So,
He was booking it.
I don't know if that race got maybe that race also was
It was
not
shortened,
100
61
miles.
miles.
But
Yeah.
yeah, saw some you see some people some I did Yukon Quest veterans in this race, so some familiar names, Nathaniel Hamlin and Claudia Bickert and I believe Tweddle from the other race, and so these guys excited. I think a lot of locals in the race, and not necessarily everyone, but a lot of locals, and it's cool to see people getting out and I always get intrigued when I see some names that I haven't seen before. So we'll see where we see them moving forward. And
Right on. All right. So then we'll also talk about the other side of things, and that was the Alaska quest. And honestly,
shit.
it was a snooze fest. There wasn't, I mean, I'm not taking away anything from anyone, but Brent was in the lead like the whole time. And,
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't, I mean, I feel like Eddie and Josie, they were kind of, I felt like the race with Eddie and Josie was a little closer than, those two were with Brent. I felt like Eddie was close a little bit early on, but yeah, I guess that was Brent's sixth Yukon Quest win. He's won four of in the 1,000 version and the last two of this shortened version, and he's clearly pretty comfortable out there, is what I would say. That's my takeaway. You don't usually ask me for my takeaway, so I figured I'd just like throw it in there, sprinkle a little, pseudo little bit. And then so Sean, might I ask what your takeaways are, sir?
yeah, Brent totally crushed it, and
7.5 hours
did he
between
finish
him and
with his
first and second.
full squad,
Yep.
and but yeah, if you're looking at it from a competitive standpoint, sure, and Brent winning by a large margin, guess it wasn't exciting or whatever. But I mean, dude, this race started in the minus 40s. It was a really cold race. They got some Whitney McLaren, by the way, just got a shout out to her again for the I don't know what time, but
Dude,
man, amazing stuff to be out there at minus 48 degrees, taking photos of these teams with, trying to keep your hands warm and on your camera and keep the lens from fogging up. That's a really, and she
we
got some
got to have her
insane
on.
photos.
I want to
And
talk to her,
she,
man.
yeah, it would be good. She's super nice. And uh, the photos there's this one photo of Eddie's team which has Wade Marsh dogs on it. I think there's 5 Wade Marsh dogs on that team. And they're literally like grinning from ear to ear, just like, we're living the dream. I love this so much. And it's minus 48 degrees, So just unbelievable to see how stoked these dogs, how stoked these guys are and how well they do at those temperatures. But you do have to be like, you do have to know your dogs, know their training, know the limits. And it seems like everybody did such a great job. Josie Thur again finishing at the top of every race that she's been
You
in
go,
this.
girl. We've been trying to get her on, man. I'm excited to talk to her whenever we do. But she's having a strong Iditarod rookie campaign leading into her rookie Iditarod. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
Like I'm on notice. Like I don't want to give you guys what my fantasy mushing team is, but Josie might be one
she's
of
gonna be a
them.
bargain. She's probably gonna be the best bargain.
Dude, no,
Uh,
she's I think because she's put her name on the map, she might not be the bargain that, like we want her to be, but
I'm interested to see what they
anyways.
price her at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then Eddie has been having a good, consistent you know remember when he won the Knick last year, like no one expected, no one had seen him win a race before, so that was really cool to see. And then um he came back here and he's got his own kennel this year, new team, and he still had a pretty good Knick race, finishing not at the top, but towards the front of the race in sixth place, and now he's got the second place at the Quest, and so he's stringing together um a good season, and his dogs have got some really tough experiences under their belt, and their confidence has to be building. And I can imagine that if you were to look at that team, in December and look at them now, it's just two completely different dog teams. So I'm excited to see, it come to fruition. Um, so yeah, I guess Josie finished right behind him, and then dude, Keaton. This is Keaton's. I met him one time. He's like one of my best friend. So he's Cody Waterbury's best buddy, and he went off and started his own kennel with his girlfriend, I think,
Shout out to
and
Cody.
like and I just was like, okay, cool. Like never really heard much from what was going on with Keaton. Then he just shows up, runs the Quest 300, gets fourth place. Okay, yeah, no problem. Uh, um, so that was really impressive to see. I'm like blown away. I mean, this is one of the toughest trails. It's got the biggest climb in mushing, uh, in mid distance mushing. It's got two of the huge climbs and gnarly trails, and minus 48 degrees and 50, probably minus 60 degrees out on the trail somewhere. I would bet a lot of money on that. And so it was cool. You got a lot of familiar names in this race, and Roan Boozer, I never really seen him like in the mushing scene since I've been here, and I'm new to it, but I know that he's been a part of it for a long time, and of course, that with that last name, but he's in his own right an accomplished musher before this. But he's good to see him in these events, and I think he's running the rod this year. And Jason Mackey, that was, I think, his debut. Maybe, I don't know if I've seen him this year. Been good, same thing. Excited to see how his season progresses, and a couple new names. Sydney Ball, she ran the Copper Basin. She's running with Dream a Dream Kennel with Vern Halter, and Vern Halter's a legend of Iditarod and mushing. So she's got some great dogs, and she's trying to get qualified for Iditarod. And Jonah Bacon, of course, is getting his qualities as well with Deke's dogs. He ran, I think, the B team and got the Red Lantern, and so yeah, it was a an impressive race by anyone that tried this thing. I think I remember reading like Anna Hennessy's, like she like left the start line, like I'm just gonna scratch it and then next checkpoint, but at least I might as well get my dogs like a run or two in. So she was just kind of planning on doing that. So yep, there's my take on the Quest 300.
We can do a quickie on the 200 and the 80.
Yeah, Jody Potts is trying to get qualified for the Iditarod. So unfortunately, I guess this race didn't go to plan for her, but hopefully she bounces back with. I'm sure there's some more events coming up this year, and again, it was freaking cold, and so you learn a lot there. And yeah, but there's only two mushers, and they both scratch. Is that what happened?
That's
I
what
didn't
it
really pay
says. I
attention to
don't
it
know
that
if I
much.
believe. Yeah, we didn't pay attention much to 200. I don't know. Like some of these results through the track leaders' websites are a little off. Like the last one, the 300 didn't even have Eddie as completing it. these both say they're scratched, but I wonder if it was shortened or altered. But I don't know enough about that. And then the 80, let's see, who was the fastest here? Arian Sanderson. I don't know if you're familiar with these names here, but just might as well bring it up. Obviously, Chrissy's
Um,
name is there, but it doesn't have a finishing time, so I'm not 100% sure there.
yeah, I mean, fun run, 80 miles. Uh, it's still 80 miles, and it was again minus 40 something degrees. So tough to be outside for 3 minutes at minus 40 something degrees. These guys were outside for 17 hours. So congrats to them.
Right on. All right. And so the only other thing we need to do is give a little prep of our guest for this episode, Mr. Joe Taylor, which, man, I had a great time talking to him. What a down to earth kind of guy. I like the vibe that we got from him. It sounds like his goal is really never to run the Iditarod. He's a 2022. That was his rookie Iditarod run. And you'll hear it in the interview, but the Iditarod was never really on his big like goals. He got some dogs. He doesn't have a lot of them, and he just loves dogs. He's literally worked with dogs since he was young. They said that he said something about working with training dogs for the
Seeing eye.
blind. So I was just like, I don't know, I just loved the vibe. I loved how he's like, yeah, I wasn't trying to do that, Iditarod, but then all of a sudden I was qualified and realized I could do it, so I went for it. And he's still like, this year he ran the Cusco 300, and you know, I think he's down to run like one race here and there every season, but it's like racing isn't his big long-term goal or anything. And it doesn't sound like he's going to get a bigger kennel either. So I think he's just trying to enjoy the dogs he has while he has them without bringing in another generation into the mix. And um, I just enjoyed our time with him. That was kind of some of my takeaways. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, if my takeaway is like if you want to start your own kennel and be just okay with like one generation of dogs, like one like you're not gonna have, and he's got 2 to 6 year olds. They're all in prime right now, so he's taking advantage of while he can. He ran the Cusco this year, ran the Iditarod 2022. He ran the Copper Basin, the Two Rivers 200, the Quest 300. So he's gotten to borrow a couple dogs along the way because you need more than 10 race age dogs. But he's got 13 dogs, little property near Fairbanks, small little cabin. And he's just like, dude, I just want to hang out and explore with my dogs and you can bring, with 10 dogs, you can bring most of them inside, on the cold nights or for any reason really. And, he's doing some really fun. He's in an area where there's amazing trails, but then, going and he's on 3 Brooks Range trips that are, a week plus long and explored up there. And, it just is like cool. It's like, dude, I'm doing my thing at my pace. And he's like super humble about his like mushing skills. It's just like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you got second place in the Two Rivers, and he's like, oh, it's a fluke or whatever. I'm like, nah, man, that's second place. Like, that's permanent fact that will never be changed. You got second place and the Two Rivers 200, passed a bunch of teams in the last run, tough trail, and then 25th place beating. We were joking about it, but it's just truth fact that he beat Martin Boozer and Jeff King in that race. So he's like, yeah, I remind people about that all the time. He said it's pretty funny, but yeah, I mean, he's just doing like keeping it chill, but he is like chill. To be clear, like training a team for the Cusco, training a team. He started the Cusco with 10 dogs. That's crazy, dude. And he got 11th place, and he took like 5 extra hours, dude. I mean, he's just like this guy's a real deal musher, and he's doing it with his little team, ragtag team that they're like from all different corners of the mushing world. He's got dogs that are freaking like Inuit River Huskies mixed with Alaskan Huskies. He's got Jeff King dogs and Mitch Seavey. No, he literally has like one or two Jeff King dogs, one Mitch Seavey dog, one Ryan Olsen dog, one Greenland fucking dog, and it's got this team that he's just like pulled together. And I think he's just super close with this team. Not to say that, I mean, other mushers are too. But I mean, he's just got like 10 dogs. You just achieve a next level personal connection when you have 10 dogs and not 45 dogs, you know? So I was inspired. I'm like, I need to fucking buy a property and build a little cabin and get 10 dogs at some point before I turn like 60. So,
Dude, so I was going through his Insta. I was going to share these with you real quick and for anyone watching. The adventures that he goes on. Let's see. Hit that. So like got the mountains here in the
Dutch
background.
range.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that just he talks about this, so I'm not gonna like take all the stories away from letting you all hear them, but just like these views look so epic. And he talks about taking like
Shit.
he takes like a little thermal tent or whatever and just sets it up and can really I think he talked about like doing like 10-day trips or whatever. Just was like, man. So yeah, make sure you
I want
guys
to do
check
that.
his page out. He's Mushing Malarkey
Mushing Malarkey.
on in Instagram, and he's got a nice website. It hasn't been updated in a little while, but it still has pertinent information that is
Really
up to
good,
date. Yeah.
really good dog bios and genealogy and some adorable, all the pictures of those dogs have hats on them. And they're all like, you can tell the dogs are all kind of like a little bit like, yo, what is this hat on my head right now? I don't like this. But they're like, also, I'll do anything for you, Dad. I love you.
So I am kicking myself about not asking one question in particular. And Sean and I were kind of joking around about this. So on the Cusco website, it has all the mushers. He's listed. And under sponsors, it says, "My grandma's beanies keep the head warm." And I wanted to ask him about that so bad because clearly, like, he's got a great personality and sense of humor. And so I'm sure there was like a funny story there or something behind that, we kind of missed that opportunity a little bit. But nonetheless, it's a good guy and just super happy to talk to him and I hope that you guys enjoy this one. Sean, you got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, he like had his whole, he's getting studying
Oh, that's
microbiology
right.
and then
Yeah.
whatever. And he just was like, he like met some sled dogs doing some research or something. And it was just like, yeah, I'm just going to abandon everything I had going and move to Alaska and get some sled dogs, just see what happens. And here he is, Iditarod veteran. Cusco made $7,800 at getting 11th place in the Cusco. I mean, it can be done.
Yeah. No, it was a good one. And I think Sean, even you, like, I think that you were like, interesting. I haven't, given the ten dog kennel a thought, but you're like, So I could see your wheels turning when we were just talking to him about that. And
Oh, I've given it a thought,
well, now you,
but it's
you
cool to
heard
see
you heard
someone
how
do it.
he's pulled it off exactly.
Yeah, this is it could be somebody to get some advice from on how to pull something off like that. Um, but yeah, thank you, Joe, for joining us, and we had a really nice conversation with you, and maybe we'll do it again. But yeah, y'all enjoy.
Alrighty, folks, welcome back. We've got our next guest up for this episode, Mr. Joe Taylor. Welcome on. How you doing today, man?
Good to be here. I was telling Brendan a second ago, we just got out of a week plus long cold snap where at my place I got back from Cusco, and when I got back from Cusco until 5 or 6 days later, I never got above 40 below at my house. So it was a perfect time off for the dogs, where I was sleeping with half a dozen dogs in the cabin every night, and the other half dozen came in the morning. Um, but yeah, so it's -6 today in Fairbanks, and everybody's out t-shirt weather now. um, but yeah, no, it's I'm happy it warmed up.
Oh my gosh, yeah. People were bitching and moaning down here, and it's been fun because I think it's fun. Like the Anchorage scene is kind of hilarious that they're like always people are always like, oh God, it's like snowing again, and guys dropping down to 20 below or whatever. I'm like, dude, you live in Alaska. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, this is a thing. And it's kind of, but the thing about 40 below in Fairbanks, it's like, you guys, it happens every year, but it's like, it's never doesn't suck. It's like, man,
Yeah, no,
that's just tough, dude. That was,
it's never fun.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you guys are on the other side of that, and I don't know, dude. I got a feeling there's another one coming before you can ride off into the spring. But
Oh yeah, no, and I mean, I was talking all December and early January about how warm of a winter it's been, and then usually by the time you get to the end of January, like you're not gonna get to usually the cold snaps have already happened, or you get an idea of the winter it's been, and so I definitely spoke too soon.
Famous last words right there.
Yeah.
How
man,
long have you been up in Fairbanks for?
I came up, so I worked up here the summer of 2016, and then actually moved up here fall of 2017.
Got you. So
I
you've been
well, I
here for
read
a while.
I poked around on your website, and it's great. It was a good website. I really appreciated
Shout
the
out to
dogs.
mushingmalarkey.com. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't updated it since 2022 Iditarod, so I'm glad it's still up there.
But yeah, no, I mean it's good. There's great stuff on there. Especially, I like the dog bios. They're
Yep,
very detailed, like those little things that you notice when you spend all day with your dogs. And
yep.
I saw that, yeah, you got a microbiology degree, and well, that's your career, I think. And
No, yeah, not working in that field. So
okay,
I coming up and running sled dogs kind of you put a cramp in continuing education or getting a real job. And so I do sled dog tours in the winter, and then kind
oh,
of
okay,
work seasonal jobs in the summer. Um, but yeah, maybe going back to grad school here soon. But I've been saying that for half dozen years now.
yeah. I saw that it said that you had done like research with sled dogs, and that was kind of your intro to the
Yeah,
scene.
so Arlie Reynolds, who's a veterinarian, and was at the time the dean of the vet school here in Fairbanks. So Fairbanks has a kind of unique program partnered with CSU. So vet students can do their first 2 years of vet school here in Fairbanks, and then they do their last 2 years of vet school, which is kind of like your clinical stuff, doing surgeries, working in the teaching hospital. They do that down at Colorado State. So he's a vet dog musher, and was doing research as well. He's a PhD. I mean, he's got all the letters behind his name, but he's a champion sprint racer. He's won for Rendezvous and ONAC, and that's who I came up doing research with him. And we were kind of studying at the time, like how the immune system responds to exercise, just kind of some basic research, like understanding different molecules that are part of your immunological response to exercise. Um, and so that's how I got exposed to sled dogs. So I got this opportunity to come up and do a research project with them. Didn't know anything about sled dogs. I grew up training guide dogs for the blind. So I had like worked with dogs growing up. We always had dogs in the house. But yeah, I came up here and was exposed to the kind of sprint racing scene that way, and working with the dogs, and definitely loved it. And I came back up after that summer to go to grad school, did a semester of grad school, and during that winter had started to get in my own dogs and realized that I liked running dogs more than I liked going to school. And so, yeah, dropped out of grad school and been running dogs ever since.
Damn, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, that would be way sicker than getting paying for education.
Yeah, yeah. And once I ended up, I'm still working with the same company I've been working with since then at Rod's Alaskan Guide Service, and they like the company doesn't own any dogs themselves, and so there's like a
Oh,
dozen local mushers with small kennels, and we just kind of say when we want to work, and we all show up with our dogs. And my buddy built the sleds that we use, and so it's kind of a sweet deal where I've been able to pay for dog food, doing tours a few days a week, and yeah, so it's worked out pretty good.
yeah, I think I know a couple of those mushers that are doing that, and you're an Esther. Does that mean your
Yep.
neighbor is Josh McNeal?
Yeah, like
Nice.
literally a half mile down the road. Yeah.
That's awesome. You guys, all right. So y'all like in touch throughout the winter? And
Oh yeah, yeah. I see Josh quite a bit, and before, so I'm at my girlfriend's apartment right now, and before we were dating, Josh used to be my shower daddy. So Josh has plumbing and electricity and all that, and
Shower daddy, what a term. I
yeah.
love that. Shower
So
daddy, that's great.
yeah, so I'm off grid and I'm in a 10 by 12 cabin. So it's petite living, but it's easy to keep warm. And yeah, so no electricity, no water, no nothing. So melt snow for the dogs. But yeah, when I want to shower and go get a beer in town and not be the stinkiest one there, I used to pop over at Josh's all the time. So that they got used to me popping in at all hours.
oh, that's
That's
awesome.
funny.
Thanks. Thank you on behalf of Joe. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
uh,
Have you seen him at all since his accident?
Yeah, so I just was over at his house, I think yesterday, shooting the breeze. But yeah, I mean he's doing all right. Yeah, it sounds like it's not as bad as it could have been, and so he's just gonna do some PT and try and get healed up.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
and I want
That's
to
good to
go
hear.
more into the Bethel thing, but before that, I like having done research with sled dogs, and you have, not I haven't. I mean, I've
Yeah.
done bro research, I guess, but yeah, like, are you familiar with? I'm not. I've only kind of heard it from other people, and I kind of pieced together, but like the like well-funded like sled dog research that maybe went through like Boozer and maybe like a Texas like Tech University or something, and they
Yeah, I
did
think
like
Oklahoma State University has
okay,
done a lot of sled dog research, and then Cornell's done quite a bit as well. Um, but I think the researcher that was working with Buser, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. It's like Michael something I want to say, but I think he's out of Oklahoma State.
that sounds right.
Yeah.
And what did you like? What do you know about that? What, like,
So it's tough to say. Like a lot of the research I was involved in was like either pretty basic or we were working with a dog food company, and I probably signed an NDA, so I'm just going to say a dog food company. um, but and so we were doing like kind of product testing. They'd have a new like omega-3 supplement or something, so we'd be testing omega-3 levels, and it was all like, I mean, this, you hear animal testing on dogs or whatever. It was all super chill. Like like a normal vet appointment. We would take blood from their forearm, and that was like the most invasive thing we ever did. Otherwise, we were looking at, how their turds looked, which as a musher you do already. So we just had a numerical value to assign them if we were feeding a new kibble or something like that. But yeah, so like I mean, in terms of like yeah, it's not. I wouldn't say there's something I learned through the research that like blew my mind or taught me something about sled dogs you couldn't learn without an academic background. I think there's probably some things that I mean I learned from Arlie that just through him, he's certified canine nutritionist, PhD, vet, like a lot of that stuff he's learned through years of just being a dog musher and nutritionists and whatnot that I learned from him. But most of the research we were doing wasn't solving any like grand problems as much
Right.
as it was more like just basic research of tracking these molecules or whatever. And then it's like you can make these logical leaps to say, well, this actually makes you better, but that's not actually what we were studying. We were like, oh, this value went up a little bit when you did this, thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of like, I feel like some of the best mushers might have like the most rudimentary, like from a scientific standpoint, they don't know anything. But like from like a feel standpoint, they're like super astute, and they might explain it to you like almost like, I mean, I just remember like someone just like when the person I was working with described to me like when a dog is in heat, and it was like I was like they just didn't even it wasn't like, this is what happens with the female anatomy, and they're just real like, if it looks like that, then that's what then they're
yeah. No, and I mean, when all you do is run dogs all year round, like you just learn through observation and doing and trial and error, and like that's worth a heck of a lot more than trying to translate a textbook into training dogs. Yeah.
But like the Oklahoma State thing is my like I should be able to like recite exactly what that study found, but I'm like basically like their blood oxygen levels or something, like their ability, just like basically proving that sled dogs are the greatest athletes on earth. Like
fact checker McGee over here. All right. So first of all, Joe, you got the name right. Mike Davis was professor, the endowed chair of the Department of Physiological Sciences at OK State. Me doing a very brief overview while attempting to also listen to the both of you talk at the same time. Okay. From what I can tell, the dogs that time, like they're in amazing shape. And then the short little summer where they're not as active, like they start not acting the same way. And it just talks about how like essentially keeping them running, like they're meant to run. They're athletes. They're absolutely like they're after the end of the season. It says, what did it say? Like they're at literally the peak. It's not like their bodies are breaking down. They're still like they're still their strongest then.
Like the dogs at the finish line of the Iditarod are stronger than the start line.
They look
and that's
lean,
you certainly
like
that.
The high-level athletes they are, with personalities matching their dedication. After a season during which they run thousands of miles in challenging conditions, the dogs are poised and confident. But by early September, the temperatures have cooled and mushers are tiptoeing into their first runs of the season. You can sense the marked change in the dogs. They're just a bunch of nuts, he said. I won't read everything, but that's kind of like
that is true.
The summary that I took away there. So
yeah, and one of my buddies, actually, his master's thesis, he works and has a kennel now, but was looking at how sled dogs adapted to, we get a lot of forest fire smoke in the summer here on a typical summer. And so like dogs that were like trained going into the summer versus dogs that had the spring off and were untrained in the summer. Like the trained dogs dealt like metabolically with the forest fire smoke better, like they had less inflammation and stuff like that. And so, I mean, there are things that are kind of obvious where it's like, yeah, if you're in good health, like you deal with stress better. But it's cool to see that borne out in the research. But yeah, you tell a musher those findings and they're like, well, obviously.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, all right. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can talk more about your like mushing career. Firstly, like the fact that you just got your own kennel, and it just seems like you got it's cool to have your own thing, and and it's small and it's like probably bond on a budget, and being able to pull off these races as best you can. You got yourself a nice check from this year's Cusco.
Probably most money I've ever made dog mushing.
What was 11th place? What did that get you?
7,400, and then I got my entry fee back, so the race, a good 7,800.
Nice. 7,800, and then it's probably all gone.
Yeah, it's three, it's about $3,000 to fly him, there and back. And so, yeah, I still made some, and I was hoping just to pay for the flights. And so, coming home with a little extra is sweet, but yeah, now time to go buy some more dog food.
Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I saw like you had run in 2021, like the Copper Basin and the Two Rivers 200, and the Copper Basin. Yeah, I don't know what races you've done before. Then you have to have done other ones.
Yeah, Quest 300 was my first race,
Mm.
and that would have been, I guess, 2020, and then
Oh,
Copper
dude,
Basin and Two
dude,
Rivers.
we ran that together. That's crazy.
Yep, yep.
I like I missed you.
So you're not going to remember, but on the first camp, where
That was you?
I came over and chatted with you. It's me and Jacob Wickup, and I thought you were Loro at first, so I like went over and I was like, "Oh, that's Loro," and because the dogs were all kind of like not wanting to camp and they're barky and whatever, and it's like Jeff King's team. They're really trained up, so after 40-mile run, they weren't tired. But I just figured that was Loros because Loros have a bunch of attitude too. So I'm like, let's go say hi to Loro over here.
Dude, I remember you coming up to me and and like with like a sense of like you knew me already, and I was like, I was like, I'm gonna just pretend like I know this guy, but I don't. And like you would do, I do that all the time to this day with
Oh, for
people.
sure.
It's just, hey, Sean, because people have heard of me in my little world, and sometimes like especially if you met me like during Iditarod week, like I totally blacked that out,
Full blackout.
Oh, yeah.
Full blackout. Yeah.
and so, yeah, that I remember that camp out being kind of chilly and like
Yep.
I'm still like early on, and I mean that might have been like the first time I'd really like pulled over onto the side of the trail and camped a team. Like I camped on the highway, the Denali Highway.
Oh, yep.
But like I don't think so I was like real nervous about it, and then I like saw other teams camp there, and I was like, oh, okay, like I guess I do it like this. And yeah, so that was that's cool. Okay, I did not know that was you.
Yep. Yeah,
That's
and
too
so that
fun.
was my first race.
Nice.
That-
And how did that go for you?
Good. I really wanted to scratch. I think both in Central, on the way out, and then in Circle, and then I ended up keep going, but I was just like cold and tired, and I haven't done a 300-mile race before, and so yeah, once you get into that second day of no sleep or whatever, you're just like, I want to go home.
Yeah, dude. I mean that like the Birch Creek. What was your take of Birch Creek? Because people just people instilled the fear of God in me. Like I handled for the 1,000 a couple years before that, and you just hear about Birch Creek. So like in my brain, it sounded like a little creek, like a creek.
Yeah.
And it's like a pretty wide. It's like pretty wide.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I
it's
mean
not
it
like
feels
deep.
like it's like river running pretty much, like how wide it is. Yeah.
But if you looked at the map at all on the tracker, Brennan, you can see it's like just switchbacks, like infinite.
Yeah, if you drew a straight line over that, it's probably only a 35-40 mile run, but ends up being a 70 or something because you just go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, that was at the finish line of that race. For one reason or another, I was just emotionally just wrecked.
Yep.
I was just crying for no reason. Like I was happy-ish, maybe. I don't know what I was, but
Yeah.
that was just constantly 30 below, and then you had those summits, and both of them went pretty not piss poor. Like it didn't, like no teams turned around on me, but like they
Yep.
certainly were far from clean runs.
Yep.
And yeah.
Yeah, that was it was a fun race. I mean, it's definitely it's challenging terrain, and it's another cold race that just happened this weekend this year, and it was definitely tough on teams. Like it's always something with that race, and yeah, a lot of challenging terrain, and you can kind of have that Copper Basin trail too, like punchy and slow, and when you add that in with the cold, it's just pretty defeating.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of fear mongering around Birch Creek, and I've only done Birch Creek that year. I haven't gone back to that race. And it's cold and long. I had a pretty miserable time on the way out. I loaded my biggest dog like probably not even halfway. And so he did 40 miles in the sled, and it was kind of a slog on the way out. It was pretty slow. And he was a big personality. He just kept ruining the sled bag the whole time. And you keep thinking maybe we're getting closer. And I checked the GPS, and we're 40 miles into a 70, and I'm like, I thought we were almost there. But the way back, the trail had set up, and it was. I remember, like, I ended on a high note because the dogs looked a lot better, and we took a nice long rest in circle. And so it was one of those things where I forgot how miserable I was, the last 24 hours, because the last run went okay. So I finished, and I'm like, that was fun.
Nice. Yeah, it was a fast. I do remember it being a fast run for me as well, but still, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. So, and then 2021, you've got your other couple at qualifiers, and
Yep.
yeah, how was the Copper? 21 was a cold year.
21 was it wasn't a bad year. So 22, the year I ran Iditarod, I ran it and scratched, but I kind of knew going in I was going to scratch, and that was a darn cold year. The 2021, I think it was like -5 at the start, which, like for folks that run copper, that's a tropical start. Like, if it's -5, you're happy. And so I think it floated around, between 0 and probably like 10 below at sourdough, which is always the coldest spot. But that was a learning race for me, I think. So having a small team and then like working during the winter, I've learned over the last few years, but I think I always tried to get away with training as little as possible. And I'm, naturally a little bit lazy too. So that's just in my nature. But that copper was kind of the like, all right, I need to have more miles on the team next time I come to a race like this. That year is a 75 to start. And, it's about the third run where you start realizing like I had given him more rest early, or stacked my longer rests early, and then my plan was, give them more rest at the end if they need it, but try to in mid distance racing or distance racing where I can. I've always like I believe in cumulative fatigue, and so I feel like you always want to front load the rest, and you keep as much gas in the tank as you can, because I think it's harder to get that back. If you got 8 hours of rest and 4 runs or whatever, you don't want to do 2-2-4. Like, you're not going to get that much back on the last 4. So I'd rather do a 4-3-3 or whatever, whatever, 4-2-2, 4-4-2. I don't know, whatever. Anyways,
Yeah.
but that was my approach to that race, and yeah, I just realized, like, going into that hump run, like, I started that race, I think.
Wait, was that in that was in a different direction than this year, I believe, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't have Tulsona as a checkpoint that year. So you ran all the way out to Lake Louise. So it was a 75.
Oh.
And smarter teams with, similar train teams camped on that first run. And I was like that, we had done a 75 in training and whatever. We've been doing tours and we train out in the hills. So I'm like, they're strong, they're fine, whatever. And so that first one went well. They looked good on the second run. And then, I started realizing, they don't have that zip anymore. And, not a lot of teams are, but I had started with 11 and I had dropped a dog at the first 3 checkpoints. So I was down to 8. And I just dropped 1 at each. And so I had 8 dogs for the hump run, which is, let's see, that's Myers to Chistachina, or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Sourdough to Myers is the short one, lots of hills. And that's like, it's funny, it's the shortest run, but I always think it's the toughest run in copper, because it's just a lot of up and down, and you don't get in a rhythm. But then, so we did that hump run. I camped them just before the hump. So I only did like 20 miles and then camped them just to get a little life back. And then, finished, I think, with a good, happy team. But it was definitely one of those races where I was like, oh, they weren't ready to run the minimum at at copper. And I was really like, I saw it, I changed the plan. I took straw out on that hump run. Like, I knew, like, this is a 70-mile run. and like they're already lost a little bit of that pep, so let's just go a little bit down the trail, camp again, and get some energy back in them. And they finished happy, and so that was like cool, like learning to manage a team. And then yeah, I ran the Two Rivers 200 that year, and I wasn't planning on that, so I kind of stopped training after Copper. But my buddy was essentially like, "Dude, you have one more qualifier for Iditarod." And at the time, like Iditarod wasn't even a goal. Like, it's one of those like, "Oh, maybe one day I'll do it." But and he's like, "Just go do the Two Rivers 200. Like, you'll have fun. Your dogs are just ran Copper. Like, they're in shape." And so yeah, I like did a few more training runs on them and ran the Two Rivers, and that was a funny year too. I ended up getting second, but it's like totally a fluke thing. So they had gotten a really nasty windstorm before the race, and because I like kind of took some time training off and wasn't planning on running the race, I was like, "Oh, cool, I'll just go do the Two Rivers 200, like take extra rest, get them through it, and then I'm qualified if I ever want to run Iditarod." And the big windstorm came the night before the race, and they hadn't thin out. Like, it's a small race organization, don't have a ton of help, and they hadn't gone out over the race trail since that windstorm came through. And so part of the trail that doesn't get a lot of use was just the trail is completely erased. And so I had taken extra rest in the checkpoints and was just, taking my sweet time. And I get on the second to last run of the trail, and I started like catching up to all these teams, and the trail's obviously pretty slow, but it was nice for me because 8 teams ahead of me had run over it. Then I catch up to the front of the pack, and the dogs they're having to find trail. They're looking for trail markers out there. The dogs are wading through chest deep snow. And so I had already banked all this like more rest than anyone else. And I roll into the checkpoint with the front runners, and I am able to leave like 10 minutes before Dave Turner. And so I left that last checkpoint in first place. But I knew Dave was going to catch me. Dave's got a real fast team. But I was, that last run, I was like, kick it. And it was a shorter run back. Yeah. Yeah, it was, I was wanting to scratch because we were supposed to go up into the mountains or the hills on that last run. And so it was going to be like a longer trail to the finish line, but they decided not to do that based on like the conditions. And they're like, we'll just go back the way you came because that trail was going to be blown in and be the same deal. And so but yeah, anyways, I left that checkpoint a little bit ahead of Dave, and probably made it. I think it was only about a 35 or 40 mile run to the finish. And I think we made it like 20, 25 miles before seeing Dave. And it was like right at that moment where I was like thinking like, man, like I haven't seen Dave yet. Like I might get first place. And right when I thought that to myself, like in a blur, Dave just passes me, and his teams are just loping and looks awesome. And and we're just waddling down the trail. And I'm like, I can't believe I thought I was gonna beat Dave. But yeah, I got a second place trophy in the house, and it's just kind of a fluke thing, but right place, right time, I guess.
Hey man, give yourself some more credit than that.
Yeah.
It could happen again. Who knows? And it's 25th in that Iditarod isn't that's a pretty strong showing too.
Dude, all right, let's go there for a second. All right, I mean, I'm looking at that. Like, you can say that you beat Jeff King and Martin Boozer. By the way,
that's true.
Oh, and I do say that. Don't worry, I do say that.
Jeff was wearing. I think that was when he was running Nick Petit's team, and had just met those dogs like a week ago. And then that was probably Boozer's 39th and final Iditarod.
Hey, let's not minimize this, okay? All right.
I beat two 4-time champions.
Hell yeah. That's how we say it.
So let's not like skip. I don't want to skip just getting to the Iditarod, because you just said that wasn't even a goal and that wasn't really on the radar. So now you've finished the Two Rivers and second place, and like what happens between the end of that race and going ahead and signing up for that Iditarod?
Quality, baby.
So my buddy, Jacob Whitcup, who
nice.
Yeah, if you know Jake, yeah, so he's basically was just like the little devil in my ear, being like, dude, 50th anniversary, like a lot of teams are gonna sign up. It's a big year, like just go do it. And yeah, I had 10 dogs at the time. And so I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna run Iditarod. Um, and reached out to Brent, and and so I decided I had to run. Didn't take a lot to convince me. Because sounds
Just
like a
twisted your
good
arm just
time.
a little bit.
Yeah, I needed someone to convince me, but yeah, it was easy. But yeah, I reached out to Brent, and he I I'm not that comfortable, like, just like some people, and it's fine, but get dogs like right before a race. Like, they look at their team and they're like, I got 12 that I'm really happy with, and they'll reach out to someone and get two dogs before a race for their 13th and 14th dog for Iditarod. And that's not how I wanted to do it, knowing that I didn't have 14 dogs. So I reached out to Brent, and he gave me 4 2-year-olds to train for the season. And so they came and lived and trained with me. And so, yeah, Iditarod was 14 dogs that year. And so I had 14 dogs for a 14 dog race. And yeah, that was a fun training year. And yeah, I don't know, another year of learning a lot. And definitely that year put a lot of miles on the team, but still was probably what you consider like a low mileage um Iditarod team. Like I think Cusco's January 26th, I had just as many as, if not more, miles for Cusco on the team than I did for Iditarod. So still navigating, like doing tours 3 days a week. Then this year I did tours 2 days a week, which definitely helped get more long training runs in. Um, but yeah, and then yeah, it is definitely like 50th anniversary. Go do it. Why not? And kind of no time like the present. And I had two young pups that I got that summer, and then the rest were between 2 and 4. And so um, yeah, all 2 to 4 year olds, and that's like perfect dog team for a rookie Iditarod run, and go take it easy and get down the trail. And the nice thing about when you're going to run a rookie race going into it, you end up with a well rested team that you get to the coast, and they usually have a lot of pep in them, and so you end up being a lot happier than a lot of the people around you that you see them on the coast, and the only reason you seeing them is because their race didn't flesh out how they wanted, and you show up smiling and they're all grumpy and they're not real happy to see you.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you finished with 12 dogs, so you clearly were,
Well,
taking.
sorry.
Go ahead. Cut me off.
No, I
That's
was
fine.
just
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was saying that you started your training with 14 dogs, which is like pretty rare to start with 14 dogs to train, and then
Yep.
you gotta. So it's like they might have had what you consider to be lower end of mileage, but you almost kind of had to keep 14 healthy dogs, because if you push the mileage up a little bit, statistically, you're gonna have one or two dogs that has some kind of something happen, with a
Totally. And
soreness.
that's like the challenge of electively having a small kennel, is you want to thread that needle of training aggressively enough to have a team that's prepared for what you're asking them to do, but conservatively enough to minimize injury risk and things like that. And so I think that's something I'm getting better at, and managing to keep dogs. Like, this year was my highest mileage year, and keeping everyone healthy. And so I had 11 dogs in training for Cusco, which was a 12 dog race, and I ended up starting the race with 10 this year. I had one; she'd been getting wrists, and it was a real hard trail this year, and so I just didn't take her. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely trying to thread a needle with a small kennel. And yeah, going in with 14 dogs, um, people definitely look at you funny when you tell them that you got 14 dogs for a 14 dog race. And a lot of people think like it's just dumb, or you shouldn't do it. And I think there's people that get into the sport that think you need 30 dogs to go to a 12 dog race. So um, hopefully people can realize that you just take good care of the dogs and train a small pool, and and you can get a lot out of the individuals that you have.
I mean, I'm inspired, dude. Joe doing this is like, realistic financially, and for like to get and start to become a competitive musher. There's just way more moving pieces happening, and you still are competitive musher. You got second place, and you beat 4-time champion Jeff King, 4-time champion Martin Boozer, dude. And so, and I've always been my wheels are always turning. Like, how can I do something like what you're doing? And and you're doing it, and you can have 10 dogs and then there's a super long list of people that have a bunch of dogs and would benefit from dropping 2 or 3 or 4 dogs off with Joe to train for the winter, and then benefit from that training in that kennel's future. So yeah, it's cool that you pulled off. It's kind of like Riley, the way he started too. It reminds me of.
Yeah, no, and I mean, for me, the rule is I don't want more dogs than I can feed out of one bucket, and so that's what I've settled on. I don't want to split up dinner into 2 buckets. I don't want to carry 2 buckets around. I want to feed out of one bucket, and so I mean, the year in Iditarod, I had 14 in training, but I had 17 dogs in the yard. I got 1 old lady, and then I had 2 pups. So I got a 6-gallon bucket that year, but. to make the rule still work. But
I think they make 7-gallon buckets as well, as my understanding. So.
That's funny. So all right, so there's 2 things that I want to talk about. I still want to talk about the Iditarod, but I also do want to talk about some of the bumps and bruises that may come along the way of building your own kennel. Sean, where do you want to go with things?
I mean, you just were taking it there. You just go ahead. I mean, the bumps and bruises of kennel, like you're scraping by financially, like to start things off, buying a property and building a cabin, or maybe it came with a cabin and you got all those mouths to feed, but like it's doable. Like 10 dogs is not, as expensive as 30 dogs. I mean, so it is like, it's still like a huge expense though.
Yeah. And I mean, like you guys, I'm sure everyone else has said it, but it's like dog mushing gets more and more expensive. And so I think it'd be really beneficial for a lot of people that want this life to at least just see that, you don't have to get 30 dogs to run the Two Rivers 200 or the Quest 300, or even Iditarod. I think that there's a lot of people that would tell you that that's how many dogs or how big a pool you needed to work with. I think the big caveat is that I don't have a multi-generational kennel yet. So all my dogs right now are between 2 and 6. And so I don't have a bunch of old dogs that have retired that I've chosen to keep. And I don't have like a bunch of pups running around. And so it's like, when you look at the guys that have been doing it and been breeding and have multiple generations in their kennel, like the equivalent, I think, to me, are those guys that have 22 dogs or 26 dogs. And that's like a really small multi-generational kennel. And so like, I'm definitely lucky to have this many, because all my dogs are of race age. Because when I started getting dogs, I got only like puppies and young dogs. And so my oldest ones are 6, and that's about as long as I've been doing it. So I'm like lucky in that sense. And if I wanted to keep doing this for a few decades, I'd realistically have to be in that 18 to 22 dog range. But yeah, I mean, it's super affordable. It's easy. I don't want handlers. I don't want other people running my dogs. I mean, part of that, having that few dogs, is like, I got into this because I like just wanted to have my own dogs and run them and train them how I wanted to train them and stuff like that. And then, you get so big that you need other people helping, then you kind of lose that personal touch, and not knocking how other people do it. And like, that's just how I want to do it. And yeah, you might not, when Iditarod or when Copper Basin or anything, like having this small of a kennel and working with this pool and whatnot. And I mean, I got dogs in my team that are like Inuit dogs and freight bred dogs. So it's like, we're not geared for going and winning races, but it's like, it's, fun. And I like training dogs, and yeah, you can go to a race and win a little purse money and compete with some bigger kennels and have fun. And yeah, I think it'd be cool. Yeah. If I think people getting into the sport, like, know that that's an option, that you can still have a small team, and, you can still train pretty hard. And if you're, good at taking care of your dogs, you can still show up with under the maximum and go compete.
Yeah, the 10 dog start at you said that was what you started with at Cusco?
Yeah, this
That's
year.
like
Yeah.
wild. That's pretty crazy, dude. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen often. You don't see that. And yeah, that was a
I
really
was
strong race you
uneasy.
did.
Yeah, it went well. I was definitely uneasy before the race. Definitely was nervous, and Cusco, I think, is, yeah, obviously logistically it's not as challenging, but it's I think about as nerve wracking as like taking on your first Iditarod, where like Cusco's such an elite race. There's such little rest, that you get
Long
this little,
runs.
like, yeah, long runs, exactly. And so you get this kind of like imposter syndrome, or like, what the heck am I doing here? And I only brought 12 or 10 dogs to a 12 dog race, and it's like the 12 dog race. Uh, so yeah, I guess the nice thing about Cusco specifically is showing up with 10 is, and especially this year, it's a super fast race and there's no big hills to climb. And so, um, it's easier to keep the team down at the start, having two less dogs. And so you're able to keep them at an ideal speed, and they don't, come out too hot. So that helped. But then also, Cusco is a race where, you people end up finishing with smaller teams, because you're asking a lot with that little rest. And so that's a concern too, starting with two less. Is like, am I going to have a team by the time I get to Tuluxac? And that was like, if you watch the race, or if anyone watched the race, I ended up taking extra rest in Calskag. So I going into the race, I thought I'd run, if you guys know the layout of the race, or Brendan, so I'll kind of lay it out. So you leave from Bethel, and then you run past Tuluxac, which is a checkpoint on the way home, but not on the way out. And you run to Calskag, and that's a 90. And so I camped about halfway of that just for an hour, and that keep a little zest in the team. And my plan was to run the minimum after that. So it took an hour on that first 90. And then you have Calskag, and then Aniak, and then you loop back around to Calskag to Lixook home. And so I was going to run originally, which I should have done. Katie Joe did this Calskag, blow through Aniak, Calskag, and you take 3 hours at each, and then you have to take 4 hours in Tuluxuk and go home. But my girlfriend was vetting the race, and she was in Aniak, so that messed with my, blowing through Aniak, because I'm like, well, I want to go see my girlfriend. So I ended up taking 2 hours in Calskag and 4 in Aniak, and then it's 50 miles back to Calskag and about another 50, just under to Tuluxak. And so, like, Pete Ritchie and a lot of those guys running the minimum, you just blow through Calskag and you do a 100-mile run. But it was about 40 below when I left Aniak, and there's definitely some wind, and I didn't bring a seat on this race. So I'm like, it's Cusco, it's a fast race. Like, I don't need to sit down. Take a lighter sled out. Horrible mistake. I'm like a tall guy, and my back standing on the runners with those long hours. It was pretty brutal. And so it's dark, cold. My back was like spasming, and I'm leaning over my handlebars to stretch my back out. And so by the time 50 miles later I got to Calskag, I've never wanted to get off my sled so bad. And the dogs looked really good. I mean, that was like taking that extra hour on that 90, I think, set him up really well to do that run. But I was the weak link, and yeah, so we took, total, we took 4 hours there, so we took 5 hours extra rest in the race, but still,
Damn.
Did all right.
Yeah.
And still, it took 5 hours extra rest, and that's still 3 hours less than the mandatory copper. Like, it's still such a fast race. And yeah, so it's 45-hour race. But yeah, I might have been 10th or something if I had made that push, or I might have gotten to Luxic and had a team that didn't look that good. And so I think, I'm really happy with what I did, and then I got to finish with a team that was still moving along pretty good at the end, which that feels good.
Yeah, I think that's like something that I wish you saw more of like you can take this extra above minimum rest and then you're still going to be finishing in front of people that took less rest than you and
Yep.
with a faster team. It's just like so I just feel like everybody's thinking like you kind of have to go minimum rest if you want to be in the middle or upper towards the front, and you could have taken a couple hours less rest and probably still would have had similar speed. But I mean, yeah, you took an extra 5 hours of rest and you're still finishing making $7,800.
Yep.
It's like, it's pretty, it can be done,
Yeah. And then, I mean, I know it's like hard on everybody, but the mental side is like, you feel a heck of a lot better at the finish, especially if you got a team that like looks like, you could keep going. And I've been lucky, like on Iditarod, that's how I felt, and on Cusco, that's how I felt. And part of that's is just like I don't have the mental fortitude really to like do it. Yeah, I don't have that inner drive, and so
it's insane. I just feel like for me, I've thought that too. You probably have a little bit more mental fortitude than me, just I would think, but I relate to you on that. It's the fact that you're like on fumes, running on fumes. You're just pulling off like a not competitive race. For me at least, you were competitive, but I mean like an 11th place race. Like if let's say this, if you had a team and all you had to do was execute the Pete Kaiser schedule, like all you have to do is just take the rest at the Lower Calskag, Aniak, and Tulaksak. And all you got to do is like dogs will 100% perform, and you just follow this step-by-step list. It's like for me, I don't know if I could do that. Like even if it was all just it's just the extra couple hours staying awake or whatever it is. Just the mental aspect of rolling into a checkpoint and being like, I can take like a couple hours. Just like thinking about that break in your future helps.
Yep. I was kind of talking about something similar with Jessica Clake at the finish, but she was talking about how her husband she thinks is a better racer than her, and part of that is she'll give him a schedule and he just does it. Like there's not versus like when Jessica's racing her dogs or I'm racing my dogs, it's like because you get to make all the decisions and you can change your schedule because you feel comfortable doing that because this is your operation. Like, she's like, hey, you go here, you take 3 hours, you go there, you take 3 hours. And he's like, cool. That's what he does. Yeah, that's what Jessica told me to do. That's what I did. And so it's like, you don't deal with all the like, 3 a.m. thoughts on the back of the runner when you're freezing your butt off and you start changing everything that you want to do. And so, maybe I'd be a better driver if I was on Pete's team and Pete just told me to do this, and I would be like, okay, Pete told me to do this.
I don't know. That's like another understated part of mushing. I think that I just think maybe I'm just a little bitch is what it is.
Yeah.
But like the whole aspect of like how like you get sleep deprived and cold, and so you just like your brain starts it's emotional, and it's just like you start thinking negative thoughts that aren't there. Like you think like this for me, like what I think the dogs can do is so much less than what they can do. But I'm scared to believe in that or whatever. I don't know it. Like you're like, they just ran 90 miles and we're going to rest 4 hours and then go running and then rest 2. It's just like, can they? And it's me. That's the problem, not the dogs. They're crushing it,
Yeah. And I didn't bring any headphones or something. Usually I like to just blast something into my ears so I can't listen to myself thinking anymore. And so I didn't bring a seat on the race and I didn't bring headphones on the race. And those are two things that like maybe I would have been able to go through Calskag if I had those. But my brother will send me, there's like this Navy SEAL guy,
David Goggins.
The the conquer your inner bitch type of stuff. And me and my inner bitch, we get along real good. Yeah.
Uh,
That's
yeah,
good.
no, the inner bitch was totally leading the decision
Yep.
making.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, David.
Yeah. All right. So let me get in here for a second. So you said you were tall, Joe. I'm curious how tall you are.
6'3".
6'3". All right.
Yeah,
Nice.
I,
So
yeah,
you
I did
are
not
like,
see that in the
have
photos.
you met a taller musher? Because
Um,
Sean and I were having this conversation. He's like, dude, most of the mushers are pretty tiny.
yeah, your might be taller than me, but
That's about
yeah, I
it.
don't know. Yeah, that's all, the other like
Dan
real tall.
Caduce, maybe is he tall?
I
He
met
looks.
Dan.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
I
might
don't.
be. I don't know. I can't remember.
he's somewhere in the
Uh,
6 foot range. He might not be over
yeah,
Yeah.
but
6
the
feet, though.
but the tall guys remember when someone's taller than them. So
Y-
you know,
Yeah,
It's true.
no, it's when I like have to
you
look
would
up
have
at
been like
someone,
that.
it's weird.
That bastard's taller than me. Um,
I'm the
so
tall guy here.
that's just interesting to hear you mention the thing about, your back hurting and, being a taller person. And it's just not something that I guess most of the people we have on are shorter. And so we've never really heard that before. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But what I wanted to do is I'm curious, like, how much into mushing were you before you're like, I just gotta fucking get my own dogs and just be my own boss? Like, uh how do we get to you having your own kennel?
So, like, yeah, I never handled for a distance kennel, and then I never really handled it at all because the sprint kennel I worked at, I mostly was working there, like helping with research and stuff like that. I mean, we did dog care, and I scooped a bunch of turds and whatnot in that time, but I never had like the true handler experience. But I had friends. Jacob had just started his kennel, distance kennel at the time, and so I think that winter I was helping him train his team, and he had a bunch of yearlings, and we'd go out to the White Mountains here and stuff, and go have fun, and that's like just seeing what he had gotten to do with his own dogs, and then like I kind of realized like I don't really want to go work for someone else, like and then like handling doesn't pay, it's pretty thankless work. um, and I theoretically was going to be a student, so like I was busy doing that, and so I'm like, well, I'm gonna get a at first I just got a couple dogs, and I was just like gonna ski jor with them, and then that lasted a few months of the winter until I saw a sled on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, and I was like, well, this is like super cheap dog sled. I might as well get this. And once I had that, I'm like, well, I only got two dogs, but I got a sled, so maybe I'll get like one or two more. And yeah, so my first dog was from Jacob. He was a yearling, um, and um, he was with me that winter, and then I had another dog from Joey Reddington. So Joe Senior's son and Ramey's brother. So Ramey's Ryan's dad. Um, yeah, doing some family trees there. But Joey was a sprint musher.
I,
Um,
I don't know if I connected the dots there, but we won't get lost on that.
yeah, founder of Iditarod, Joe Senior, who had sons, the two that were like big mushy names, Ramey and Joey. And so I had befriended Joey when I came up to Fairbanks.
Gotcha.
And one of my buddies lives out in Manly, where Joey and Pam still lives. Joey's passed away, but so I got a sprint dog from Joey, and then Miles from Jacob, and those were kind of like my two dogs pulling me around. And then I had she was 6 or 7, but like my pet dog. So that was like my 3 dog team pulling around where I lived in the like suburbs of Fairbanks. And so that's how that started. And then I got some pups and yearlings that next winter or next summer, and then kind of grew it from there. So I had like 6 or 7 dogs that next winter, and we just had a lot of fun training and doing trips. And then that I guess that following winter after that would have been the Quest 300 year.
Got you. And so, like DNA of dogs. I think you mentioned Brent let you borrow some dogs. Did you get any like filling out the rest of the dogs you have? Is there any other DNA
Yeah.
there?
So I got like total hodgepodge. So the dog I got from Jacob was from Mike Santos, and Mike had mostly like Jeff King stuff. I have a few, two or three dogs that go back to Jeff's stuff. I got a one dog that's a half Jeff dog, half like Eagle freight line. So freighting's just kind of like dogs that are bigger, fuzzier, hardier. And a lot of people that live out in like Eagle have that type of dog. And then I got one. She's like a quarter Alaskan Husky, and the rest is kind of a Greenland like Inuit style dog, like an Arctic style. And I got her locally. And then I have one dog from Mitch that I got as a pup. Um, and I got a dog from Wade Mars, and a dog from Ryan Olson. And so like the genetics go all over. But when I was getting dogs, I kind of wanted a pup from here, a pup from there, and like have a little bit of diverse genetics, and then kind of learn the style that I liked. And like I'm pretty partial to the pre-Zig Jeff King stuff, the fuzzier, more traditional Jeff King stuff. I really like. They're super nice dogs. And they like, I kind of have like more of a pet dog life with a lot of my dogs. And so like they listen super well. They're good inside. They're good cuddlers. You know, keep the bed warm. And they're just like easier dogs to work with than some of the other lines that I've worked with in terms of just like the pet side. So taking them like hiking or whatever, like they're just super good recall, easy dogs.
I know I think it was Ophelia. Your dog's got Bailey and Clipper as
Yep.
parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bailey and Clipper were like, part of the crew when I was at Jeff's, and Bailey
Yeah.
now is retired with Jessica Kleka.
Yep.
And
Yeah. I tried to breed Bailey to foamy to this dog. So this is the Greenland, mostly like Greenland dog, but that's foam. And so she's like a quarter Alaskan and like, yeah, Greenland Inuit dog. But I tried to breed her to Bailey, and well, they tied, but nothing happened. Um, and yeah, Bailey's an awesome dog. And then I have two Clipper pups, and I think Clipper is like a pretty stellar breeding female. Like if I could go back, I'd have a whole kennel full of Clipper pups.
yeah, I'm not sure if she might have recently. I feel like she was with Jesse for a little bit, and maybe she's living a retired life in the lower 48. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
I think that's the case. But yeah,
and
he
then
had
you have a Jerry. Who's the Jerry pup that you
yeah,
got?
his name's Dopey. And so yeah, Jake bred that litter. So he had a female that goes back to like Cook lines, which are kind of like this sprinty type of kennel in the Northwest Territories in Canada. And so they have like a bit of a hardier type sprint dog than some of the like more pointer stuff here. And so they kind of um, bring that speed without some of the negatives of like the hound, of being a little bit more cold sour and stuff like that and shorter coated. And so yeah, Dopey was bred to Jerry, and I freaking love that. I mean, he slept in the bed last night. Yeah, he's a good dog. And he did some leading as a 2-year-old in Iditarod, and then he led 2 runs in Cusco and did great. And then he could sleep inside for 18 hours and not go out to pee. Like
That's
he
awesome.
can do it all.
Yeah, the genealogy and pictures and all the stuff that you have on your website was fun to go through. I could just totally see like Ophelia had the like looks like everything Clipper but painted like Bailey,
Yep. Yep.
and I noticed you went on a Brooks Range trip, which looked pretty epic. And maybe we can finish with that. Like how I've always wanted to go up there. It's a long ass drive, Brendan, to go up to the Brooks Range, this huge mountain range that crosses the entirety of Alaska in the Arctic. And a lot of mushers will spend some some gas money to go all the way up there and do some crest mushing in the spring, maybe go
Yeah.
hunting or just exploring. So what was your experience like up there?
Yeah, I've been at least 3 times now. I try to go every spring, and that's like if that's all I ever did with dogs, I'd die happy. Like that's why I have dogs. You just go, run 10, 15 miles away from the highway and set up a base camp, and then you just mush out of there for a week and 10 days. And a lot of people do caribou hunting. I've always brought the rifle, but end up just having too much fun running around with dogs. And then you're like, well, I got 4 more days. I don't really want to like have deal with having the caribou out. And depending on the year, sometimes it's like warm out, so you'd worry about the meat going bad and whatnot. But yeah, you get some ptarmigan and eat ptarmigan for dinner, and all you got to do is run. I mean, it's like Iditarod without having to run as far. Like you just you wake up, run dogs, come back, eat dinner, and then we got like Arctic oven tents, so you can go collect willows during the day when you're out with the dogs, and you got a wood stove in your tent, keep you warm at night. This last spring, it was like 30 below the whole time we were there, which was definitely
Like during the
um,
day?
yeah. I mean, it probably warmed up a little bit during the day, but yeah, it was it was cold. But the sun, you get so much sun that time of year, especially in the Arctic, like you feel warmer than the ambient temperature is, because like you can just feel the sun hitting you. Um, but yeah, when the sun went down, like you were like, oh yeah, it's cold out. Um, but yeah, no, I mean that's as fun as it gets. I mean, you don't need a trail, and you're either mushing on like frozen rivers, or you're on a good year you're crust mushing, where like you get a real nice, like a thick. Brendan, I don't know if you've done like skiing or like been in the mountains much, but when you get like this nice wind or sun crust on the snow, you can just like walk on top of it. And so the dogs, like, you don't need a trail to go. It's like normally here in Fairbanks, once we get a season's worth of snowfall, if you step off the trail, like you're sinking down. There's no crust. But there's so much wind, and that at that point in the year, that sun helps make a crust too, and so you can just point your dogs in any direction. And so like good GHA work, I mean, like that's I all my dogs go run lead up there and get a chance to do that type of training. It's really fun. But yeah, you just point your dogs wherever you want to go, and you can go, and it's like pretty unique, and especially it's like perfect for that in spring in the Brooks Range. But yeah, that's my heaven. Like I love it up there.
Is when you have it that leaders up there, like the first few minutes, are they like, and they've never done something like this? Maybe the first time you went up there, let's say,
Yeah.
like, are they like, dude, what? Like looking around, like trying to find the trail, and then they eventually just kind of like, and you just kind of give them a ha or a G, and they're like, okay, I guess I'll go right over here, and then they're kind of like, all right, well, there's not a trail, and then I also second part B of that question is there's a picture of you with your sled. It's not you, but it's a picture with of your sled just on like completely exposed tundra. It must have been like windblown, or maybe it was a
Oh
warm
yeah.
year or whatever. Like I'm assuming you were just straight up mushing on like zero snow, and
Yeah.
and I'm interested to see how that was too.
Yeah. So that winter, like down in the valley, it had gotten pretty warm, and so like the tussocks, once the tussocks start getting exposed, that melts the snow around them a lot quicker and whatnot. And so there's patches in that valley where, yeah, no snow. So yeah, you're just tundra bumping, but um, it's fun. And yeah, I mean, like leaders, I think um, they're definitely like it doesn't take long for them to click into it, but there definitely, I think, is a moment where like it takes a second for them to like for it to make sense, like what's going on, and that we are just running. And some deal with it better than others. So um foam didn't go on the first Brooks Range trip because I thought that was when I tried to breed her to Bailey, and so I was hoping she was pregnant, so she stayed home. Um, but then I took her out this last year, and it definitely took her a second. And like she's not a main leader; she runs like lead more in the fall, and then when we do like fun runs. But being more of an Arctic style dog, she doesn't really have like the pace in lead. And so if we're doing like trail breaking or slow trail or something, I'll throw her up there because then that's like happy for her. But she doesn't really want to run lead at 10 miles an hour. But yeah, so like throwing her up, it took her a second to like, yeah, like be comfortable and figure out like, okay, like we'll just run straight until Joe says otherwise. And then, you get on conditions too, where it's fun watching them. Like when you're running on a frozen creek that's got overflow spots or wet spots or whatever, got holes in the ice. And I just kind of let them like choose their way across it. And so it's really fun watching leaders like kind of think about where they're going and be smart and like try and keep a general direction, but let them pick, ultimately we want to be over there, and you can make your little rights and your little lefts on your own. I won't tell you otherwise to get around stuff. But watching them like, yeah, get to pick their own route and think about where they're going is fun. And I think that translates a lot. Like if you have leaders that are comfortable in that type of environment, then I think you have leaders that are comfortable going through the Topcock Hills and the Blowhole and being confident and comfortable when there are very little remnants of a trail around. And so I think that's definitely like helped in my Iditarod, where we had that super nasty windstorm with like Gerhardt and those guys got caught up in it. And
So
so
you were
yeah.
ahead of them on that, or?
Yep. Yeah, I was ahead of them. And I mean, that was gnarly.
I heard it
Yeah.
from Sean Williams, and it sounded like something out of like a fable from the Homer Odyssey or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Go
No,
ahead.
I mean, there's like making it through the hills was wild because, um, you're basically running on like sloped trail that like the wind's just blowing you down and you're trying to keep your team up. And so your dogs are running up on the trail and your sled keeps sliding down and you're trying to like get back up and you're going forward and you're getting blown over or tipping over because you get another wind gust or something. And so that was pretty wild. And then I get through that. And there's that shelter cabin out there before you really go through the blowhole. And I have like wanted to go in that thing so bad. But I knew Martin Boozer left White Mountain like half hour ahead of me, and I'm like, well, Martin's old. If he can go through this, I guess I can too. And so that was like my like, oh, I don't need to stop. We're fine. And so it was, the blowhole is itself like the mountains were definitely way worse because you got more just terrain obstacles. But then the blowhole is just wild because you're just getting it's like a sustained like 50-mile-an-hour wind, which is just like it's just nuts. And so
It's
you're
like
just like,
deafening sound. The sound of it.
yeah, yeah. And I was playing a horrible game, like it was still dark out, and so my rough kept getting blown over my headlamp, which like illuminates it so brightly it just like hurts your eyes. So I was like holding it back, and then like my cheeks would start getting cold, and I'd like had my rough up or my buff up as far over up to my eyes as I could, and then I'd like want to warm my face up, so I'd let my rough down and go like that, and then I couldn't see where I was going, and so I'm like doing this whole dance to like try not to frostbite my face but be able to see. Like
Jeez.
yeah, that was insane. But it's like the dogs never thought twice about it, which was really cool for me. And seeing them just like lean into it, and they were totally fine with it. And I think like, yeah, training in adverse conditions definitely helps. And like we do a lot of trail breaking at home just normally. Like I kind of make a point to beat all the snow machines out every year. And so like for them, any amount of trails like a good trail for them, and I like them having that mentality.
Wild.
Nice. Well, Joe, I know that we're up against the clock. This time with you has absolutely flown by, and I know that Sean and I both, as is always the case, we have tons of more questions and more things that we could chop it up and chat about. But thank you for coming on today. For any of the listeners, just if there's anything that they can do to support you or follow you, or just anything on the horizon that you want to mention, just want to give you that opportunity to do so.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, basically, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Mushing Malarkey, and that's kind of, you can go like, comment, subscribe, whatever, and that's the best way to find me. And we'll probably be at Cusco again next year. It was a blast. So that's probably the next race for us.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. You generally speaking, you're doing the cusk. You're just like maybe doing one race a season. Is that kind of where things are at for you?
Yeah, and I mean, for me, racing's not been the most important part of having dogs, and so it's been more like bucket list stuff. And I think Cusco's the first race I've done where I'm like, I want to go back next year. Like, it was, the vibes are good. It's a great race organization. The community's awesome, and so I think, I'm don't know that I'm gonna get more like young dogs. And so for me, the dogs are kind of still in their prime, and so it's like, why not go do Cusco again? It's a fun race, and I had a lot of fun staying out there. So um, yeah, I think other than that, maybe Cobuck, not this year, but maybe next year. But yeah, I think Cusco's kind of it.
Right on, man. Well, we'll definitely be following you along, supporting you, whatever races you get in. And yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.